Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another instalment of our weekly Wellbeing feature with myself, Nick Baxter. I am honoured to have a good friend and this week's guest in Steve Blundell of Indoor Climate Systems and Elysium Corporate Finance. Welcome today, Steve. How are you, buddy?
I'm good, thanks, Nick, and thank you very much for the opportunity and the invitation. Always good to see an old pal.
Always good to see you now, pal. We were reminiscing in the green room just before we went live, and I signed, when I left Worcester Warriors, I signed for Pertet Bees in 2001, I think. And the director of rugby at the time, Keith Jervis, took me to Steve's office in Solihull. I remember signing my forms in your office, in your presence. We had a great time at Bees, but we won't talk about Bees today. It's not about rugby today. It's about our weekly Wellbeing feature. And thank you for coming along and giving us your time today and having a chat about your business, how you've kept yourself positive through this, and more importantly, how you've done some great work with you and the team with the NHS. So just to recap, as part of IsoNation, we created a nice sign-off on a Friday. I think there's lots of negativity in the press, and there's lots of people focusing on some of the negativity. Listen, I think what's going on right now, we have to recognise we're in a challenging time. People have lost their lives, businesses have gone under, and it's a challenging economic landscape. However, there are some good things that have come out of this, and I think the way we are all as a nation going to come out is to celebrate some of the positives, which is why we created the show. So if you can like and if we can share, I see we got Rachel there, Bethany waving and saying hello. Guys, feel free to post any comments or questions, and myself and Steve will endeavour to answer those. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about what you do, just for the viewers out there. You're part of two organisations. Fire away.
Yeah, Indoor Climate Systems, mechanical services to commercial office blocks in London mainly. Mm-hmm. So anything to do with it, what you breathe and what you wash your hands with, and making sure you get nice clean air in your building. Work for generally most of the bigger fit-out contractors in London. And then I'm also non-exec chairman of a company called Elysium Corporate Finance. We're an investment fund looking at development finance for construction projects, mergers and acquisitions, financing, management buyouts, investing in companies and taking an equity stake and adding some experience to their board via non-exec directors, that sort of thing. So Beautiful. All good, and that's been good at this moment, to be fair. There's a lot of interest ready to move when the whole world moves into a better place.
Well, you know what? I think we'd probably be best to get you in one of our Leaders Insights interviews, because actually you mentioned two bits there, and you're heavily involved around the construction space, which I think we're seeing some green shoots. I've got one of my elements of my recruitment business is in property construction, house building, and we are seeing some green shoots. A number of the public projects have been continuing to go through this, obviously doing some social distancing, but it's really interesting and also really encouraging to hear that we are going to get through this. I think most of the stuff that's happening around releasing non-essential retail, then the licensed trade. I think the sooner we can get to a safe situation, the sooner the economy can start looking after itself. From a business perspective, and we won't go to from a highline perspective, how has it affected ACE Indoor Climate Systems initially?
Well, initially when we went into lockdown, there was there was a knee-jerk reaction where everybody said, shut construction sites. It's going to be dirty. It's going to be where the virus spreads. So everything shut down for a couple of weeks while people got their heads around everything that was going on. And since then, through what we're doing with Elysium, we've managed to help a few companies out in construction by supplying them with critical PPE. So that has opened the sites up, because there are a lot of people that weren't covered by what Rishi Sunak put out. So they needed to work. But they needed to work in an environment where they could be confident they weren't going to suffer or get COVID. Nobody knew an awful lot about it. Since those days, which now seem, I think it's 9 or 10 weeks, maybe 11.
67 days in quarantine, Steve.
And 4 hours and 16 minutes. Yeah, it's been interesting. But everybody, it's amazing how positive everybody's been over the last 3 to 4 weeks, getting things moving. We've actually got one site in Cambridge where the contractor has actually gone round and marked a grid on the floor. which is 2 meter spacing. So you can only have one person in that work area. And it's been really positive. Amazing, really. Everybody's pulling in the right direction, despite what you see in the media.
And you know what? It's not a political show, and we're not slagging the media off. But I agree, the media, and it's good for the media to focus on stuff, isn't it? And you know, bad news. You know, people want to hear about bad news. Unfortunately, there's too much focus on that. And this conversation that we're having now. Yesterday, I had 4 conversations with MDs, all saying a very similar thing. You know, people are getting used to lockdown. People are being quite creative, and more importantly, we're getting that real community spirit. Where everyone's kind of clubbing together, and every single one of my leaders' insights, we always ask, and I'll ask at the end of today's session, what do you think one of the good things that comes out of this, you know, on the backdrop of some real challenging times? And everyone's saying around spirit, around collective union, around creating that support, and around everyone clubbing together. So going back to, I suppose, the reason we did this show, it's a lonely place being an MD. How many people have you got working for you?
Well, if you count all of the self-employed project managers, probably 30, 40 people. So
you're responsible for 30, 40 people, their livelihood, their families. I'm a small drop in the ocean compared, but it's quite lonely. It's quite a stressful environment. There's a lot of pressure, managing costs, managing people, managing processes on the backdrop of limited income. What have you done personally to kind of keep yourself sane and mindful and remain positive and upbeat during this?
Well, I've actually turned into a larger version of, what's his name now? Alan Titchmarsh recently. So I've built myself a huge compost heap at the bottom of the garden.
Okay.
Which looks great. I've created a new patio area, and for some reason, after many years of suffering, I no longer get hay fever. Now, I don't know if that's a consequence of COVID, but all of a sudden I can be a gardener.
Also, who normally does the garden? Is it the wife? Have you got a gardener? Who normally does it? Who have you taken the mantle from?
Well, we normally have a gardener, but I've sort of got into it and decided I quite like this, and it's really, really satisfying and relaxing. And I've become almost obsessed at getting up in the middle of the night to water the pots when the sun's not out.
I won't even tell you about mine, because everyone will start taking the mickey on Facebook. I moved my rosemary bush in the garden, which was like hiding one of the picnic benches, and I moved that. And the last 3 days I've been doing exactly the same thing. 10 o'clock at night, making sure the roots are taking. I'm watering it. So that's been something that you've done to kind of help you mindful, to keep you mindful and to kind of keep your mind clear. From a training perspective, when I called you to invite you last week, you were on a bike ride. When I called you again this week to sort everything out, you were on a bike ride. Talk to me about the bike riding. What have you been doing there?
Well, I go to a thing called Coalition Performance, and when they stopped because of COVID, obviously, they said, look, we're going to do this online. And one of the guys basically gives you a session to do in the garden with homemade weights. And I suddenly realised I've got a bike that I hadn't used for a long time. So I started, again, 5-6 weeks ago, and I've been doing about between 35 and 50 kilometres a day almost. Brilliant. And it's been great fun, relaxing, clears the mind. It's lonely, so you can think everything through. It's really opened your eyes as well. And the wildlife at the moment is unbelievable. I went through a place called Major's Green, and there were deer running across the road, which you'd never see before because there's so much traffic and pollution. But it's amazing. It really has been fantastic.
Well, I'm pleased you're doing the cycling. A lot of people are doing walking. A lot of people are doing running. Some people are doing HIIT sessions. I'm doing loads of cycling, but unlike you, I'm doing mine on the Peloton in the cellar. But Peter last week, he mentioned he'd never really taken advantage of his environment. And not only, you mentioned there, you don't normally see the wildlife because of traffic. But you don't normally see the wildlife, Steve, because you're normally in London 3 or 4 days a week, and you're normally running around from one meeting to another, from one conference call to another. I think most of the leaders I've spoke to over the last few weeks have said they've really enjoyed being outdoors. They've really enjoyed getting some perspective. They've really enjoyed getting a bit of fresh air. Would you agree? Would you agree with that, Steve?
Absolutely. I also think that everybody like myself and you and the other guys in business will look at things and think, why am I jumping on the train at 7 a.m. in the morning or 5:30 to get into town for a meeting and then get on the train 4 hours later to come back? Now we're all experts in Zoom, Blue Jeans, Microsoft Friends. we can do so much more without creating all this environmental disturbance, and you can do more of it.
I agree. I think we talk in the Leaders Insight around changing the changes to the workforce around flexible working, working from home, video conferencing. Before, it was as a case of if you're not in person, it's not as professional, it's not as credible. But I think, as you said, we've all got very used to being Zoom bombed. I think we created the word Zoom bombed the other day by anyone running through, and everyone just saying, you know what, that's just a norm. So yeah, I think you're right. We've got Sigley on the Rob Sigley is saying hi. He's making a reference to your gardening. He's always trolling us on LinkedIn and Facebook on a Friday. Hope you're well, Rob. I've seen your new garden. I bet it's not as good as Stevie's. So, Steve, we always like to round off the interview with a good news story. And I personally, as a friend and actually you're one of my clients, I see lots of stuff that you guys have been doing. I've been really intrigued. I've been incredibly impressed. And I know you're a humble guy. You don't like to scream to the rooftop. So I'm going to take the opportunity to big you up and your team up around some of the work you've been doing with the NHS. So I think you've been doing it for the last 5 or 6 weeks. Tell us how this started and what you've managed, because you aimed at £1,000. So tell us what you started, how it all started, and what you ended up with your total.
Yeah, we were sat around one day at the start of all this, and I've got a lot of friends who work for the NHS. You obviously know Mr. Lupoli. You'll have visited many times. And a couple of us sat around and said, we ought to do something here. You could see the suffering that was going on. And we could see a lot of things going to the various charities, but nothing actually going direct to the people at the front line. So with the idea of raising £1,000 and distributing a bit of goodwill, we set up a Just Giving page, asked for donations with an idea of, we didn't know what we were going to give them at the time, but all of a sudden we got to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. And then a young man called Max McDonough, whose father used to own Crash Bang Wallop, which is kind of a warehousing outlet, kind of got involved and said, look, I'll supply you with a load of stuff at cost. So we got involved with the A&E at the QE, Birmingham Solihull Mental Health, Heartlands, the QE, the Immunology Department at Queen Elizabeth, because of Mark Shelton, obviously, that we all know.
Indeed,
the neonatal unit. Yeah, big up Schultzy. And basically went along there with two carloads full of chocolates and biscuits and drinks. And the first one was just incredible. Everyone was so blown away by it. They were piling this stuff in, and everybody, literally from the kitchen hands to the wardens to the doctors, was coming in and helping themselves for a bit of lunch. We ended up raising £8,000, of which the last will be distributed next week. With a couple of cooling fans for Solihull Hospital. And it's been fantastic. The generosity of everybody on all of our social media, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn has been a cracking medium for us. It's just been unbelievable. But we've decided to put a line under it rather than just creep up in pounds from now and say next week's the last delivery. So we'll be looking for somewhere to place that next week. So if any of your listeners have something that they'd like us to go along to, please shout up.
Listen, big.
It's been fabulous. All the help I've had from all the lads at the rugby club as well. We're doing the deliveries have been fantastic. It's been a real experience.
I'm blown away. Every week I see a request from yourself and your team, and then the following week I see you with the back of your car wide open, the boot wide open, full of goodies with loads of the nurses, or as you say, the cleaners, the porters, the doctors and nurses, everyone, because you're right, a lot of these charities, they were amazing charities, but actually being able to do something and give someone a box of chocolates or a bit of lunch, or they finished a 12, 13-hour shift and you've got some Lindt chocolates just waiting for you. It's the small things that make a real difference for people that are making the real difference in our community. I've seen Gav Beatty's just come on and said, Sir Blundell, fair play, fella. Nice to see you, Gav. You're right. We know what the rugby community is like, at times of need, particularly around your good friend and our old rugby colleague, Mark Shelton. At times of need, we all club together, and there isn't a collective like it. There is. Other sports are you know, we know about our sport. There isn't a collective like it in terms of everyone kind of putting metal to the pedal and making good things happen. So on behalf of IsoNation, I'd like to say a massive thank you. I know you've raised your 8K now, so as Steve said, if anyone's got any recommendations, feel free to post them on the website or on any of the various social media platforms for the rest of for him and the rest of the team to support. We always like to round the Friday off with a good news story. Thank you, Steve. I know you're manic. You're probably running on to your next Zoom call. Appreciate your time. I know the NHS appreciates it, and I know a lot of our readers and listeners will appreciate it. So we'll catch up as soon as we're able to socially distance properly. We'll catch up for that cold beer we've been talking about for a while. But in the meanwhile, I'm a sign off from me at IsoNation. Stevie Blundell, thank you very much, buddy, and have a wicked weekend.
Thanks, Nick. All the best to you.
Cheers,
Take
buddy.
care.